Hey everybody, this is Josh here. Just wanted to jump in real quick here from the future of this episode, and we did have some minor technical difficulties with the internet. Not sure what happened. We both have respectable Wi-Fi and sit pretty close to our routers, respectively. But for whatever reason, it gets kind of choppy in parts, and for that we apologize. And all we can say is that we need to vary Spectrum and let them know it's their fault. But we hope you enjoyed the episode anyways. We really had a lot of fun making it. Thanks. And let's start the show.
Hey guys, this is Gail Kim from Impact Wrestling, and you are listening to the 8-Bit Suplex Podcast.
Everyone, welcome back to another week of 8-Bit Suplex. We are here releasing on our normal time this week. Last week was a little bit busy, both for me and, of course, for Code Gaviria X, Sandy Gaviria. How are you doing this week, Sandy?
I'm good, Josh. How are you?
I can't complain. Work's been a little hectic, but you know what? We got Impact Wrestling. We got a special, it's October now, so we're going to be talking about one of the best horror franchises to ever be made, and that's Capcom's Resident Evil series, if you didn't catch that from the lead-in. Before we get to that, there was a lot happening here on Impact this week, getting us set up for Bound for Glory, which is now just about a week away. Man, it feels like just yesterday we were talking about, Sandy, how we didn't know how they were going to fill this 6-week gap that they rocked out with for Bound for Glory, but we're just about there.
We are there, and I am freaking excited. Are we still doing the get together or what?
Yeah, I think so. I got the clearance from Colleen, so party at my house unless Jeremy wants to open up the dojo. But if we do it at my house or at the dojo, perhaps there will be homemade cookies that we've mentioned on this podcast previously for all those that attend. That's not an open invite to the listeners. I'm sorry. I don't trust y'all.
Sorry, guys.
I know Sandy. I know
Sorry
Sandy
about
washes her hands. I know Logan mostly washes his hands, so I think it'll be okay to have certain people. Mostly. I mean, hygiene is important. But anywho,
Yeah.
Sandy, we start off this week's Impact Wrestling with one of our favorite segments, the Moose Chronicle.
So before we get started, I actually do want to tell you guys a story. I don't know if you guys remember last week I talked about how Logan and I got to meet Moose while training at the Lethal Academy. Like I always want to plug them. Great school. Jay Lethal is a class act when it comes to coaching us and training us to be pro wrestlers. So we got to meet Moose. He was a personality, man. He got to teach us a lot about selling and registering and giving us his thoughts about, wrestling. And Logan apparently asked him, like, hey, Moose, so how did you get inspiration for your character? Where did Moose come from? The man's response was just, Moose. And I feel like that is just such an amazing story that Logan and I will just never forget. The man is Moose. There's nothing that you can say about it. He's Moose.
No, I 100% agree with that assertion. I mean, yeah, you can. I can't think of a better name for that character, for that persona, than what he portrays on the screen, because he's huge. And I mean, it takes a lot to take him down. Just like a moose would. I don't hunt. I make that assumption about a real life moose. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, they're very large creatures with very thick skin. Um, so. But apparently, this moose on Impact can have some thin skin sometimes, as we've seen over the past few weeks. That EC3 is, kind of getting in there and messing with his head. And I thought this was kind of a pretty funny back and forth with Scott D'Amore. where he's like, why are you letting this happen? Why do I have this match in an undisclosed location? And Scott D'Amore basically is like, what do you think that I'm the crazy one? You have lost your title you didn't win, and you're trying to chase down a wrestler that doesn't work here at a location that you don't know where it is. And I'm the crazy one. Got it. Like,
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. Scott Demore is just over it. He's like, I have other shit going on. This is too much.
yeah, it was great. I thought I liked that back and forth. And then I believe we get another EC3 projection promo here. And then Moose says, I know where to go. So foreshadowing a little bit there.
Yeah, we start the show the same way we'll end it, and of course we'll get to that. What I thought was funny about this, that EC3 was again holding the title. Didn't he throw it over the bridge last week? What happened
He
there?
did. He did. We see a lot of that title that went over the bridge last week, Sandy.
Yeah, we what? Why would you throw it over the bridge and then you have to go get it again and then continue this torment? I don't understand. The EC3,
Yeah,
get your
right.
shit together.
Yeah, he throws it over the bridge. Oh, are we clear? We cut? Okay, good. I gotta go get that now.
Let me go ahead and grab it.
Yeah, I mean he doesn't have a young boy to send down there to go and grab it. But of course that all happens before our intro music for Impact hits. And then when we
That's
come
right.
out of that, we start right away with some action, which I always like to see. And we get our match that they advertised last week for the three-way knockouts tag match between the teams of Rosemary and Taya, Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steeles, and of course Havoc and Nevaeh. What were your thoughts here, Sandy, kind of in general?
So I feel like, they gave it their all. This tag match to me was not as great as last week's tag match. Last week's tag match, like we discussed, Josh, was just almost 5 stars. They gave it their all. It was nearly perfect. This one we did see a lot, not a lot. We saw a couple of spots that just didn't go quite as planned. It
Mm,
didn't look quite as crisp. Didn't look like a real matchup. It was more like, okay, what are our moves? What are we doing here? So I didn't really as I did last week, but I do know that they gave it their all. We actually end the match with Rosemary getting the pin on Tasha Steeles, and to me, the talents, the top stars for this match were, of course, Tasha Steeles. She was really giving it in there with her personality, with her moveset, really kind of getting in. She felt very comfortable in her character, in her moveset, in herself, and same with Hogan. They were my top performers for this match here.
yeah, as far as like an overall team, I think they definitely performed a lot better than the other teams. Rosemary was a little bit more sloppy than she was last week. I don't know what you can attribute
Hmm.
to that. There's some really weird, sloppy roll-up attempts by Nevaeh at the beginning of this with Rosemary.
Yeah,
It didn't really click
didn't work for
well.
me.
And then, there's the spot towards the end where Taya does a crossbody to the outside, and
Oh my
nobody
gosh,
catches
she
her.
ate it.
Nobody catches her.
No,
There's three people out
dude,
there,
she
and none of them
ate
decide they're
all
gonna
that.
catch her. I thought she
It
was
was
gonna come
rough.
up with some color. I really did. I thought she busted her mouth.
I
Like,
Me too. She
but
and she landed right on the concrete or the whatever the steel
yeah,
ramp.
the ramp.
Man,
Yeah, I mean,
whew, that was rough.
obviously some of what that ramp is kind of work, right? I mean, it's kind of hollow. It makes a great sound, but it doesn't feel good. You hit your face on anything, it doesn't feel good,
No,
Sandy. You know, you
for
you can hit
sure.
your face flush on a mattress, and it would still hurt pretty bad, right? Because you got
Yeah,
your nose and your teeth,
absolutely.
and so I don't know. It didn't really work. I mean, we get a pretty nice exploder suplex from Rosemary to Kiera Hogan about midway through the match, and then she does hit the spear, and then hits her finisher over Tasha Steeles, um, which really all that really kind of sets up is whether or not we're gonna see Havoc help Rosemary bring back Father John Mitchell to officiate her wedding, which we now find out is October 27th, which is of course, the Impact following Bound for Glory. A lot of weird stuff going on with some of the supernatural stuff with Rosemary. Of course, she's teleporting around backstage. Hey, listen, if you can teleport backstage, Sandy, I want to see you teleport in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I give props to Impact for trying with this Rosemary character, but I don't know, it's whatever to me.
Yeah, same.
Mm.
It's October. It's Halloween. We're gonna ramping up the spooky, I guess, for that time frame. But I mean,
Yeah,
they're not even doing like a special wedding on Halloween. That would have been the thing to do, right? I mean, I get that it's a different night of the
that
week,
would have been cool.
but that would have been like, oh yeah, the demon assassin Rosemary gets married on Halloween because of course she does, right? Not
Yeah.
October 27th. Nobody cares about October 27th. Apologies if that's your birthday, anyone listening. I don't. I mean,
Oh, way to go,
but
Josh.
maybe not. You know what? I'm turning heel on October 27th. That day can go to hell. Um,
No.
yeah, I said it. I said it. No, but yeah, it was an okay match. Um, but what's interesting too is following the aftermatch there, we do get an announcement that at Bound for Glory there is going to be the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match. At Bound for Glory, and I only bring that up now because we do have a match in this show that has implications towards that. But before that, of course, we have some more wedding party stuff, and we'll just kind of gloss over that because we don't want to bore the listeners with reliving some of that behind the scenes stuff. Just know that it leads to a match between Falaba and Crazy Steve. I'm very curious on your thoughts about this match, Sandy.
Are you really? Is that sarcasm?
It may or may not be heavy sarcasm.
It was whatever. It's Falaba. I love Falaba though. I was excited to see him get some. I guess you can call it ring time. I don't know. It was
This
just crazy,
was
Steve. I really, yeah,
this was a glorified Wrestle House match, but not as good.
Mm.
Which,
Yeah.
Wrestle House matches, of course, notoriously short and very gimmicky, very jokey. This was too. Of course, they're telling the story of Falaba stole the money from Hernandez, and he had it hidden under his shirt. There was a kind of corny spot where Crazy Steve said, monkey see, monkey do, and tried to get Falaba to take his shirt off to reveal the cash. And Falaba says, "No, I'm very self-conscious," and so that
I'm
was kind of
subconscious.
that was kind of funny. But outside of that, my notes for this match, I wrote, "This happened."
It happened.
Yeah,
It
I
is
mean
something.
that's about all you can. That's about all you can see. Um, I really don't have any other notes there, but an interesting backstage segment happens next, Sandy, with Heath and Rhino.
Yeah, so we find out that Heath is in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match at Bound for Glory. So here's the stipulation that we find out. So Rhino's, he's hyping up Heath. He's like, hey, I got us an opportunity. If either of us wins, you're going to get a contract with Impact Wrestling. And Heath is just freaking stoked, right? Of course. One of them just has to win, and he's hired. But as Heath walks away, Scott D'Amore comes up and he says, hey, when are you going to tell him the other part? So what we find out from this interaction here is that if neither of them win, Rhino is actually given up his own Impact Wrestling contract. That is a big stipulation there. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, and we are people that have watched wrestling for a long time, Sandy. Um, One of two things is going to happen. One is that one of them is going to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match, which seems insane to
Mm-hmm.
say that Heath or Rhino would win a huge gimmick match at a their biggest show of the year in 2020, or B, they come up with some other wrestling way to explain them both being there somehow because Scott D'Amore had a change of heart, or oh, you guys came so
Yeah.
close. There's going to be something. I don't think either of these guys is going anywhere, but I also kind of don't think either one's going to win the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match at Bound for Glory. Um, but we'll get to more of that after this next match here.
So we will see. So all right. So next up we have Caleb with a K introducing Tennille Dashwood. So we find out from this introduction that she's actually going to be in the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match.
Yep.
And we also see right after her, Tommy Dreamer's music hits. So then we find out that this is a 10-person match. We have Tommy Dreamer, Brian Myers, Cody Deaner, Johnny Swinger, and Tennille Dashwood versus Hernandez, Cousin Jake, Alicia, Rhino, and Heath. So yeah, we have Swinger and Heath to start, but of course, Swinger being the character that he is, immediately tagged into Neil, which I thought was funny because she's outside, she's getting her pictures taken,
Right.
she's posing, she's like, I don't have to do anything, but she gets tagged in. And of course, we have Alicia, she gets tagged in as well. Not the best performance here from Alicia. I think Alicia, she hasn't wrestled much, right?
Yeah, it's been a while. So, she's been around for a long time in Impact Wrestling. But yeah, I don't think we've seen her in a match outside of Wrestle House in quite some time. It was interesting too because when they announced that it was going to be a 10-man tag match a little bit earlier in the program, it was like, okay, that makes sense. And then how they're like, oh, we're gonna we're gonna announce the stipulation during the match of what's going to happen for the winning team, and you start to see how these teams kind of shake out. When you saw when you saw Cody Deaner come out with the one, you knew that Cousin Jake was going to be on the other because they have to pit cousin against cousin, and of course the two girls were going to be split up, and of course Tommy Dreamer and Brian Myers being on the same side, they're still feuding. It was just kind of weird, and Hernandez was the guy that was there. Um,
Yeah.
it was interesting, but yeah, no, I mean, to your earlier point, Tennille seemed like she was doing her best to make Alicia look good, and Alicia Edwards just, I think she's got some rust to kick off.
Yeah, and some training to do for sure. So of course this match is really all just goofy stuff until
Yeah.
it really picks up when Brian Myers and Heath get in the ring together. Of course,
Hmm.
these two are the big number one athletes when it comes to either opponent in each side of the ring here. We do the finish for this is Heath pins Swinger. But the really exciting part, like I mentioned, was Brian Myers and Heath getting in there together. Now, what we find out here is that the winning five will actually compete for the number 20 spot next week. So whoever wins, they'll go 5-on-5 against each other, I'm assuming. Whoever wins that match will get the number 20 spot, which I'm also assuming will be the last spot in that
Yep.
gauntlet
Hmm.
match. So, and then what we find out too is that the person who loses will actually get the number 1 spot.
Right. So lot to kind of digest there when you're watching that match. And of course, you mentioned the finish there. Heath does get the pin on Swinger. And this is, of course, after Brian Myers has Heath lined up for the finish. He's waiting for Heath to stand back up, and Swinger tags himself in because he gets excited um, at the prospects of picking up the scraps of Heath. But yeah, and then we see that we're going to have Heath versus Rhino versus Alicia versus Cousin Jake versus Hernandez. Yeah, I gotta say, it looks like Rhino and Heath are gonna get one of them is gonna get that number 20 spot in the gauntlet match because if you look at their team, Hernandez we haven't seen do anything in months. Cousin Jake is a secondary character on a comedy tag team, and then Alicia Edwards, of course, is the knockout in the match. So yeah, my money's on Rhino and Heath coming away with that number 20 spot.
Absolutely, me too.
We'll breeze past. We get another, Shamrock and Sammy Callahan beating up Eddie Edwards because why not? Um, and
Did you please tell me you caught the slip up here by Ken?
you mean the part where he completely missed his strike on Eddie Edwards?
And he trips right in front of the camera. Oh
Yeah,
my God, I lost it.
it was, man, I get producing on a budget and not wanting to do retakes. But whoever was the camera operator there definitely should have seen that happen real time on his monitor and been like, hold up, just stop and go from the top because Ken missed completely.
Seriously, I
It
just
was
can't believe that they didn't reshoot that.
I can't either, and it's not like they're filming these weeks at a time, right? Like we know kind of the inside baseball. Bound for Glory is already shot and in the can, right? We already know that's already done, that's edited, that's just we already know that they have next week's Impact done. They probably have the week after that. because they don't really care about being live. It's on Access TV. Who cares, right? I mean, that's kind of, and especially I think it's kind of a smart way to do it with the pandemic. You get everyone there, everyone's COVID clean. You shoot a bunch of episodes with everyone there clean. You send them away, and then you bring them back. Do the rinse repeat, right? You get your 3-4 weeks at a time. I'm actually kind of a fan of that kind of
Yeah,
process. Making sure the talent stays healthy. And to my knowledge, no one has tested positive from Impact. I haven't seen anything. I know that some of them did compete at the collective last week. And of course, we're hearing now that there are some positive tests that came out of that. Of course, that indie show up in Indiana. So hopefully everyone recovers well. Fans. There are some fans, I guess, in attendance that had it. Dan the Dad, an independent wrestler, announced that he had it. A lot of people were giving him shit. Like, listen, don't give the wrestlers shit. He's trying to make a living just like everyone else is. Um, it's not like he knew ahead of time that he was positive and then still went and did the show, right? He found out after the fact because he got tested after the
of
event.
course.
Everyone passed to be on the
Mhm.
event. He failed after the event. Something happened. Something transpired. He caught it. So best wishes to all those that are affected, and hopefully it doesn't turn into this just gigantic super spreader event where a lot of people get sick because of it. Because the last thing that wrestling needs is negative press about coronavirus.
Absolutely.
So, but anyways, we get a pretty good little backstage interview with Eric Young. He's really ramping up his promo work. This isn't his best promo of the night, though. He gets one later that we'll spend some time talking about. But I really want to talk about this match here, Sandy, because this was our match of the night by far, if you ask me.
Oh, hell yes, 100% agreed. We have Kimberly of ringside, Diana Perazzo, and then it is against Kylie Ray, our number one girl. My God, this match was so great. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Kylie Ray is an absolute star,
Yeah.
and I'm happy she's getting a chance on Impact to show what she can do and in the Indies. But to me, it's like, oh my God, why isn't she in NXT or WWE right now? She should be at the top, the best of the best. She,
Yeah.
hands down, is just absolutely killing it with her facial expressions, her execution of her moves, her believability of what she's doing. She's not just going in there and just doing moves for no reason, or just, she goes in there with a purpose, and it's a fight and it's a battle, and she will give it 120% every single time.
Yeah, and and she was someone that had an AEW contract in hand, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course for what we understand, what's been reported as some mental health things and some other stuff going on, she wound up leaving, and then to kind of I think to build back up to where she is getting those looks again. I know obviously AEW's said they have no ill will against her over it, whole nine yards. But I think, I don't think Impact is her ceiling, obviously. She's someone that, whatever you as a performer believe the top of the mountain is for what you're doing, Kylie's going to get there. I have no doubt in my mind about that. She's shows up on everyone's top wrestler list. She I think this was her best match from a character work perspective. Because even though she came out to the ring with her normal smiley Kylie stuff, right, there was a kind of tension to it from, the fact that we saw her snap last week. We saw, how she reacted at Victory Road to watching Susie get her arm broken. And all those things I think are still playing in her head while she's doing this character work, while she's doing all of her smile stuff, while she's, doing her penguin slide into the ring and different things like that. It just felt like there's just that little bit of tension that maybe not everything is all smiles there.
Mm-hmm. No, and the tension, man, I it almost felt to me like I could feel her blood boil whenever she was in there with Kimberly, because of the assault that they did on Susie the previous
Yeah.
week. And of course, having Diana Perazzo ringside, she was able to say, know there's a threat there. I have to watch my ass because I know she's out there. But
Yeah.
man, the intensity in her eyes when she's going up against, and Kimberly, man, she is a great talent too. When she's in there with somebody who can go with her, it's always going to be a great match. And this absolutely delivered.
Yeah, and you know, it's we talk about this all the time, you know, with Impact's knockout division. But the top of this division is the top, if you ask me, of really any women's division in professional wrestling, in North America. I'm not going to comment on, you know, like things that are happening in Stardom and things that I don't watch enough personally to form a vocal opinion about. James Boyd, obviously from One Nation Radio, is a huge Stardom watcher, and he would argue that you know half of that roster is better than anything that we see over here. This isn't the show for us to kind of parse those things and kind of you know analyze and different things like that. But what we see here is two women go out and have a really good match. Everything hit pretty hard. And like you said, with the believability of what Kylie does, it reminds me a lot of, you know, when we talk about the believability of what Jordan Grace does, the speed and the power and everything is there. And I think
Oh my God, yeah.
historically with women's wrestling, there's almost like a back throttle, right? Like you'll have to ease up a little bit because you can't show the hit. You can't, you know, look like you're getting roughed up because, you know, even going back to the diva era, right? You still had to look like a diva when you were done wrestling. You couldn't really hit people. So I think for me at least, from a North American viewing perspective, seeing women like Kylie Ray, and Jordan Grace go out there and just really just pummel each other. Um, and it's kind of refreshing to see, you know, them kind of take the brakes off, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That is my favorite when I can, you know, what's funny too, because when I train at my school, you know, sometimes like I love the women's wrestling where it's like, man, you don't have to hurt each other, but God, make that contact, make it seem
Right.
like it's a real fight. That to me is what makes women's wrestling now so different compared to like what you were saying back in the diva era, back long before, where it was just two models going in there and pulling each other's hair. You know, they
Right.
want to make it seem like it's a fight, which is what, like, even just wrestling with men. You know, if it looks too what's Will Ospreay saying, that it looks too choreographed, it doesn't look like a real fight, right? Even though he's an amazing athlete, that's a
Right.
big critique. That it's a fair critique. You know, if you're looking in there like it's a choreographed dance routine, then it's not going to look like a real fight. To
Right.
me, wrestling, my preference, because wrestling is so subjective, anyone can say, hey, I like the choreographed stuff, I like the goofy stuff. You know, everyone has their own preference. But to me, the more it looks like a real fight, like a real battle, that's what's going to grab my attention. That's what's going to make me just adore that wrestler. And for that reason, man, Kylie Ray, even just in the way that she runs like she means it. Like, oh, I need to get
Yeah.
from this point to this point to hit this move. And it's not just like, I'm going to run here to make sure that I'm on time for this move. Like, no, she runs,
Right.
and you
She
better
books it.
be on your
Yeah.
mark so that she can do her stuff.
Yeah. For sure. And I think too, like, you know, like you said, like selling that believability that you're in a fight. You know, she comes out, she has her big bow, she's all smiles. By the end of that match, that bow is gone.
Oh,
Her
she
hair is
switched it.
completely disheveled. She's just covered in sweat because she's working her ass off. Her face is flushed. It looks like she was in a fight. And it does not detract from her look. I have to
Not
say,
at all.
objectively speaking, right? And not even saying like, oh, look at how hot she was. No, I'm saying her presentation is still A plus start to finish, and it's not. There's no detraction from her losing her hair bow or her ponytail coming out. None of that detracts from it. It only adds to the effects of, you know, we want to suspend disbelief when we're watching professional wrestling. And if you watch two people, and this is men included, go out there and just, you know, kind of do like, you know, they said, you know, and I share the same criticism of Will Ospreay that you do. The rest of our network does not. But you know, a friend of the podcast, Zach Porter, is and my soon-to-be brother-in-law. He is one of the biggest people that says, you know, what's the difference between a Will Ospreay match and every kung fu movie you've seen that came out of Hong Kong? So, I wouldn't go that far
Hmm.
personally, But there is, like you said, there is some criticism to doing the over choreography, not making it look like a real fight. Um, but not to talk more about Will Ospreay because I really don't want to. But you know, great match out of Kylie, great match out of Kimberly. Kylie does get the win here with the smile to the finish. And we haven't seen her win with this since we started doing the podcast.
Oh, that's
But
right.
she really, really, and actually, I thought it showcased her technical ability somewhat with the way that she rolled through some of these attempts of Kimberly to get to the rope to kind of sell that, you know what, hey, Deanna's a good technical wrestler, but so am I. And then she really wrenched up on the submission.
And I think this finish that she started using not too long ago when she came to Impact, right? The FTF. I think she used to have something else before, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
she
But
would kind of end with that super kick. Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Well, she took my finish, but she made it look awesome. uh, I was really sad actually when I saw her do like I forget when it was. This was before we got to do our podcast, and I was like, I love Kylie Ray, and then I see her do the freaking SDF at an Impact match for the finish. I was like, damn it! No, I was so upset. I was like, that's gonna be mine, man. What's up?
Hey, listen.
But it's okay. It's okay.
You know what? I think there's plenty of room for two badass women doing STFs. I don't think that you need to worry about it. And you don't call yours, you don't call yours the smiles to the finish. So I think there's room, right? It's not like somebody does a Taz mission and then Taz gets all bent out of shape. Like, hey man, you can't do my move. Whatever.
That's true.
It's professional wrestling. There's only so many moves, right?
There really are.
You know, but it's about doing it well, and you do it well. So,
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. We get Kylie, of course, doesn't let go of the smiles to the finish, and that leads to Deanna super kicking her off of Kimberly. But then what was interesting was that Deanna tried to beat her up, and Kylie almost no-sold that super kick and just whipped the shit out of Deanna Purrazzo.
That was that extra sizzle. That was, to me, the chef's kiss. Mwah. She got her hands on Tiana and just said, screw you, I'll see you about
Yep.
the glory.
Yeah, that post angle, it's too often we see the heel just, oh, the stupid baby face is getting angry. I'm gonna just go pummel him now, and we just watch the heel beat the baby face to a pulp, and then we're left to go, oh, okay, well, the baby face is gonna win now at the pay-per-view because they got the beat down. But when you do it this way, I honestly don't know where this is gonna go now, Sandy. I know it's gonna be a good match,
No idea.
but I don't know which way they're gonna go. I don't know what Deanna's long-term plan is as far as Impact Wrestling goes. We know she's friends with a lot of the people in AEW. I hope she sticks around Impact because I enjoy watching her every week.
So too.
But listen, we've always said the Impact's not the ceiling for a lot of these people. It's a great place, I think, to go and get your reps and get some TV time. But when it's time, it's time. I thought Deanna was misused before in WWE. And I think if she went to a place like AEW, she'd be really a pillar for that women's division to grow on. So, we'll see what happens long term. I don't think she's signed a long-term contract or anything with Impact. I think she's on a show-by-show. So we'll see how it goes. But, kayfabe reasons included, I have no idea which way this match is going. It's been kind of a 50-50 book.
It is. They're keeping us on our toes, but I really do hope it puts the strap on Kylie Ray.
Yeah, she's been racking up a lot of indie belts this year, rightfully so. I actually did go back and watch the Warrior Wrestling Stadium Series match where she does win the Warrior Wrestling Women's belt off of Tessa Blanchard. Pretty good match.
Oh, no.
But I will say this, the canvas on the ring, because it's outdoors, and they're the main event, that thing was so slippery. Like, there was a spot where Tessa goes to drop kick her in the back. Kylie is draped over the middle rope, almost kind of set up and to receive a 619. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And Tessa runs to go and just do a drop kick to her back, and she slips going to do the drop kick, and she kicks the shit out of Kylie Ray's back. Like when I saw it, I was like, oh god, that hurt. Like, that was bad, and it could have blown out Tessa's knee, her ankle. I believe that was earlier on in that Stadium Series, so hopefully they figured out a way to um, keep that safe the whole night, because that night it was not. But so Kylie, hey, she's ready to add another belt though. I think she's ready.
Hell yeah, I think so too.
Uh, you know, Speaking of people that believe they're ready for the belts, why don't you listen? This is a couple of giant men here wrestling. Sandy, why don't you take us through this one?
So for the next match, we have Doc Gallows. He comes out with Carl Anderson, and we have him against Madman Fulton. Now we start this out by Carl Anderson getting on the mic, just saying, "Hey, we could have gone anywhere. People ask us why we're here. Well, we're the best on the mic. We're the best wrestlers. We're the best looking. We're the best this and that. But in order to be the best, we have to have the titles." And so they're pretty much saying that, hey, Bound for Glory, they're going to take the titles from the Motor City Machine Guns. And of course, we'll wait to see what happens. I'm very excited for the match. It's going to be hectic and wild. But this match was really funny because I thought it was just going to be like a nothing match. And they made it seem like that at first. They
Yeah.
come in the ring, they're just hitting each other with some shots, some elbows, some punches, and immediately goes to the outside, and we immediately get a count out. And I'm like, oh, well, this is kind of what I expected. And I thought it was going to be it. But when they come back from the commercial break, we find out that the match will be restarted, and it's going to restart as a no DQ, no count out match where we see them just beating the hell out of each other with all kinds of weapons and chairs and post signs, and it was just a battle.
Yeah, what was interesting is that when it came back from the break, they were already had a bunch of spots that they kind of passed over. At some point during the break, I guess Ace Austin got physical with Carl Anderson. We never see that. They just
Yes,
mentioned it on
yeah.
commentary. And we see Carl Anderson's kind of knocked out for a good portion of the match. And I don't think we ever see Ace Austin, period. At least I didn't when I was watching it. It was a really interesting kind of reset. And I was glad that they went the way that they did to make this, a no DQ, because I mean, obviously these are both just gigantic men, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, there was a lot of really hard hits, a lot of shots I didn't expect to see on a Tuesday night on Impact. Um, but ultimately, the big LG gets the victory with what was an absolutely brutal two-handed choke slam through two chairs. And I don't know if you noticed, but the one chair, he completely bent the seat. Like
No, I
the
didn't.
chair was still standing, but the corner of the seat got completely folded in by Fulton's body crashing through it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
was
was
pretty
rough.
gnarly.
Right before that, Fulton ate one of the chairs that was posted between the second and first turnbuckle in the corner. When they come in, like WWE, when they do the shoulder to the post,
Yeah.
but he went full speed and just ate. I didn't even see him pull up his hand to protect his
No.
face. He just ate it.
He just ate it. I mean, listen, I'm not a huge fan of anything unprotected, especially when involving steel chairs. And I hope he got all shoulder. But God, that was just like like
I love that. It looked brutal.
it did.
But I was having this conversation with Logan. I personally am not the biggest fan of like big guy wrestling when they do only big guy stuff. Like, you have the story every time when it's like the little guy versus the big guy. And if the big guy, has a smaller opponent, all they're going to do is the big guy stuff, right? Slow pace, just slam here, slam there, this and that. And to me, that can be kind of boring. And, we're always excited when the little guy kind of gets in there and gets in all the action.
Yeah.
But when it's, two big guys working like big guys, it can be very boring, which is why I thought this match was going to be just count out and that's it. So I'm glad they restarted as a no DQ, like you mentioned, because then after that, it gave them an opportunity to explore and just really beat the hell out of each other and really show something more interesting than just two big guys going in there and being slow and just no excitement and, the same old stuff. Now it's
Right.
really interesting when two big guys wrestle like they're not big guys, because like, okay, my size advantage isn't going to work against this opponent because he's just as big as I am, so I have to do more. And what actually Logan reminded me of was the battles between Braun Strowman and the Big Show. You know, those were big dudes, and they were going in there when they had their little series. They were moving like smaller guys. So to me, that's
Right.
interesting. And you know, this match delivered. It was fun. It was they just beat the hell out of each other.
They did, and and what was interesting here is, I didn't expect it to be our kind of quote unquote main event, but it was the last wrestling that we really see here on this episode. And
Yeah.
it went pretty long. Um, it was a couple of segments, like we mentioned. It went to commercial and they came back. But after this match, we get what I think is probably the best Eric Young promo I maybe have ever seen. This is a really strong showing out of Eric Young here. He's talking all about, Rich Swann. He's talking about where he came from, all this and that, and he calls out Scott D'Amore, who's been waiting the whole night for a phone call from uh, Rich Swann's uh, physical therapist, and um, it was kind of a silly wrestling moment where Eric Young finishes what he's saying. He's like, "Well, what is it? Tell me what's gonna happen." And then it cuts away to Scott D'Amore and his iPhone rings. Oh yeah, of course. I've been waiting all night to and so of course he comes out and Eric Young keeps interrupting him. Um, and then he lets him know, hey, you caused some additional substantial damage. And then Eric Young goes off on another huge, tirade. And then, of course, Scott D'Amore drops the news on him that Rich Swann is ready to go. And then, of course, Eric Young puts a pretty brutal beat down on Scott D'Amore. We saw Scott D'Amore get beat up a little bit, but now we get
Yes,
to see some of that
dude.
wrestling training that Scott's had in the past.
His head was freaking bouncing like crazy on that turnbuckle. I was like, oh my
He
god,
hit that
somebody
turnbuckle
freaking
pretty
help this
hard.
man.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, oh. And then he was just laying on the boots on him. Whew, it was rough. I was like, is somebody gonna come out and help this poor man who has no business being in there right now with Eric Young? But then of course we have, thankfully, somebody comes out to rescue poor Scott, and it's actually Rich Swann. He comes in and pulls. Hey, so what does he call that? What does he call that move? Because we all know it as a lethal injection. Just a cutter.
I think he just calls it the handspring, kind of like a rebound stunner. I'm not sure off the top of my head. If you keep talking though, I can figure out what Rich Swann's cutter is here. What he calls
I
it.
think they said cutter on commentary, but I'm not too sure.
Let's see. I'm trying to find the name of it.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah,
All I know is that
they
I
just call it
say,
a handspring cutter. He doesn't have a special name for it. It looks like.
uh, well, yeah, he goes in there and gives one of those to Eric Young, and he stands tall in the ring with the title actually as Eric Young scurries away to the back and is in shock that Rich Swann would come out and be able to do all this when he clearly admitted that he had put him away.
Yeah, it's he's got that kind of look of fear in his eyes. Again, similar to the first time he puts him out, and then he comes out and saves Eddie Edwards. And we see, Eric Young's like, "You're not supposed to be here. This is my plan. This is not part of my plan." And also too, I mean, not only does Rich Swann hit that handspring cutter pretty perfect, he's moving around like he has no injury. So he looks like he's ready to go. It looks like we won't be selling any ankle injuries or anything once Bound for Glory comes. And I gotta be honest, I'm pretty excited for that match now, Sandy. Uh, it looks like it's going to continue to be one-on-one.
I am too, and hopefully it stays that way. Hopefully, no shenanigans next week, and we just get to see the one-on-one, the big for Bound for Glory on this one.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here, and hopefully too, it does look like with all the Sami Callihan, Kim Shinerock stuff that Eddie Edwards has moved on and he's in a different feud now with those guys. So it does look like, unless there's some incredibly random and pointless interjection, There will be one-on-one. This isn't WWE, so I'm pretty confident that there's not going to be a random stupid injection. Um, but hey, I've been wrong before. The last thing we need is whoever wins the gauntlet match to decide that they want to challenge that night, right? Like a Money in the Bank type scenario.
Oh
Let's
my
let's
God.
not do that. Let's stay away from that.
No.
So we have to end the show. You mentioned this up top, Sandy. We end the episode the way we started it.
We did. So we actually get to another episode of the Moose actually find EC3 and a scramble ensues. EC3 just is talking not his nonsense, but the stuff that he's been saying, like, hey, you gotta free yourself, Moose, and then all this shenanigans that hopefully we'll actually know what the hell he saw later on. But Moose is tired of it. They just go one-on-one to scramble. Initially, we see EC3 getting the upper hand, and he's walking away with the title, laughing like he just accomplished so much. And he said, "Oh, I thought he was going to be better than this." Just like seconds, there's more. And of course, thankfully, Moose comes back up, because I was like, if this is it, I'm going to be upset, because they just went at it for like 5 seconds, and that was like nothing. Come on. Like, after
Right.
all these chronicles that we've seen Moose, like, you're really going to get beat up after 5 seconds? No. So he does come up, thankfully, and they start going at it again. And it's just Moose going at it, just punch after punch after punch. And we don't get a shot of EC3 from the camera angle anymore. It's just Moose's fist, just blood. So we can just imagine what the outcome was from EC3's thing. I thought it was pretty clever. It was just like, I am sick of this shit. Just blood all over his fist, and he just walks out of there. And he grabbed the title too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He did. Yeah, he left with his fake title that he never won. It was funny. Kind of a funny story is, I was watching this yesterday, and I was sitting at my desk, and I have a bigger monitor off to the side that I use for work, and then I do my dual screens here with my laptop, and I set up my second screen. Work had kind of slowed down for a brief period, so I said, okay, I'm gonna watch Impact for this week. Threw it up on my second screen here, and my daughter woke up from nap, and she likes to come and watch wrestling with me if I'm watching it on the computer. Well, of course, she wakes up from nap right at this Moose Chronicles, and now she didn't catch, because she's 3. She didn't catch the hand coming up from the punches being covered in blood. But I was like, oh, hey, your mom needs you. And I just kind of like skirted her, like, go, go, go. And she's like, of course, Colleen's like, what's going on? Why did you send her over here? And I'm like, it's a part that she can't watch. And of course, Colleen from across the room kind of saw what was happening. She goes, yeah, don't worry. Mommy doesn't like this either, Molly. Like, so,
Aww.
it is what it is. But I thought it was an effective segment. And obviously EC3 got what he wanted with antagonizing Moose, and it's hard to believe, but we still have one more Impact before Bound for Glory.
One more. We'll see what happens next week.
We shall. Now, before we get to next week, though, Sandy, we are going to get back into our video game discussion here. We promised the listeners last week, hey, listen, we knew that there was going to be a lot of Impact Wrestling and no video games. But we do want to, now that it is October, we are going to talk, we thought about doing a broader horror games topic. We thought about, some different things. And we said, okay, and we could probably do a couple of different game series here for the month of October. But to me, and I think to you, the first game when it comes to mind, or the first series that comes to mind when you talk about survival horror games, is Resident Evil.
100%. There's no other, like, the very first thing, as soon as he said, hey, let's do spooky stuff for Halloween, or for like October, okay, Resident Evil, because I love horror movies, I love Halloween, I love horror everything, but when it comes to actually playing horror video games, such a waste. Like, we'll get to this, I'm sure, but Biohazard, was not, I had to put on Disney music, I had to put the TV brightness, like, the highest level, I had to put, like, candles and, like, mute it with the Disney music. That was the only way I could play because I didn't have anyone. I was living alone at the time, and I didn't have anyone else there. And I was like, I'm gonna get through this, but it was the Little Mermaid playing, and I was so scared out of my mind playing this game. And I
Right.
still didn't finish it. It was too hard.
Now you're of course talking about Resident Evil 7 Biohazard,
Yes.
which is kind of an interesting callback because the original name for Resident Evil when it released in Japan was Biohazard. So Biohazard,
I had no idea of that before.
yeah. So for whatever reason, it didn't. I think there was and this happens often when you move things to a Western audience. There are some topics, some things that you want to kind of tie into a little bit differently. And in the West, we don't really like talking about chemical warfare as much. We don't want to touch into that. So we do get what is called Resident Evil. Of course, it is because of the mansion that you spend the entire game in that you get the Resident Evil, right? It's the Spencer Mansion. Um, I was first introduced to this game actually with the second one because I'm a little young for this when this first came out in 1996. My parents would never have allowed me to play Resident Evil as a child. I did so anyway at a friend's house, but not till later, like I said, not until Resident Evil 2 came out on the Nintendo 64, which of course Nintendo at that time had a great reputation for taking a lot of the blood out and a lot of the different stuff. So I didn't really get introduced to it until Resident Evil 2. And even at that point, I kind of came in like the back half of the game. I didn't really know what was going on. My buddy had rented it from Blockbuster, and that was kind of what we did the weekend. Was by the time I got over to his house, we just played the last of it, right? But the first one that I played start to finish was actually the remake of the first game that was released on the GameCube, which was an absolutely awesome, repolished, re-released update, and really started a theme of re-releasing old Resident Evil games that we still see today. But what was your first experience with the game series, Sandy?
Just like with you, I think we're in the same age group where we just by only like a couple of years missed the very first Resident Evil on the PlayStation. And of course, me being like the number one Nintendo person, I had to just support it when it came out for the Nintendo 64, and that was my
Right.
first memory and recollection of Resident Evil. So it was that Nintendo 64 version, and I was so little at the time, and so I would just play. I think we had like cousins that would just come over and play because I couldn't play it alone otherwise. I
Right.
remember just being so freaking petrified of I don't know what they're actually called, but the creatures that come through the windows that
Yes,
with the
those are
remake I
called
actually got to experience that fear again.
Oh yeah. So those are called lickers.
Those fucks.
Yeah, they
They
are.
would ruin my life when I was little.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's one too. Like if you don't have the shotgun, you're completely screwed. Like you have to have something with some kick
Oh
when you
my
fight those
God, you're
things.
done.
Yeah. Oh, you have your
Yeah.
9mm? Good luck. Just run into the next room and try and open a door, right? And was crazy
Dude.
too about the aesthetic, right? When you play the first games, they are a fixed camera angle. The controls are very difficult to get used to at first because forward always moves you up on the joystick, moves you where your character is pointed. So you're constantly moving on this axis of turning your person and then moving forward. And then to shoot, you actually have to hold the button down and then push the trigger button. So, it was a different, and I think the gameplay actually added to the horror of everything because it wasn't a fluid game like
Yeah.
we were getting with other shooters, and it really just was a very, you turn a corner, and now there's a long hallway with 4 windows on the right side, and you have that first experience with that liquor in the back of your
Terrifying.
mind, and now you're just going, well, I don't want to go down that fucking hallway, you know?
Yeah. I hated it. And you know, it's so funny now thinking back on it, it's like I can't even imagine what it was like playing that game with that freaking Nintendo 64 controller. Now that you're breaking that down, I'm like, how do we
Yeah.
do that?
I think the answer, Sandy, is that we were better at games when we were younger because I couldn't do
I
it
think
now.
so.
I can't imagine doing it now.
No, that would be freaking nuts.
because it is a really, really strange way of playing. And then, I don't know if you played this one, but so because we already had Resident Evil 1 through 3 plus Code Veronica X before we get to the GameCube remake of the first game. But then the same year they released a prequel called Resident Evil Zero. And Nintendo and Capcom worked
Right.
together to say, listen, if you thought our controls were hard when you played as one character, now play as both characters. And
Oh my
you
God.
you're literally sitting there controlling one character with the left stick, one character with the C stick, and it is I don't know how at 12 years old I was able to navigate that game, Sandy, and beat it. I did. I don't know how, and I don't want to go back and try it again. Um, but yeah, I don't. Did you ever play that one?
I did not. So thankful. I would have gotten my ass beat. I
Yeah,
can't even
and
imagine doing that.
it is so weird and so hard to get used to that you're just kind of like,
I
well, I
know.
mean, this is it, right? You're just kind of rocking and rolling with it. And boss battles, become this mishmash of, one of your characters gets, wrapped up in the boss, and you got to use the other character to shoot him free, and just all kinds of tag team stuff.
Oh no.
It's and puzzles in Resident Evil. By the way, we should mention this game is very puzzle oriented. Um, Puzzles
Hmm.
in Resident Evil are confusing, and then when you do Resident Evil Zero and you have to do two-person puzzles with one controller, it becomes more confusing.
All right, that sounds terrible. Because actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that. My favorite part of Resident Evil is the puzzles, and being an adventure gamer,
Right?
that's my favorite type of games where you have to decipher, like, okay, find the clues, decipher what this means, decipher what you need to find. Some games make it very easy for you to solve that so it doesn't feel like a challenge. But I feel like the Resident Evil games are really good at keeping it so that you still have to explore everything and have that adventure on your own to decipher, okay, what to do next, where to go from here. And of course, on top of that, all the terrifying shit that goes on that makes you
Right.
want to just cry, because I know I did one time when I was little. It's too scary.
Yeah, and there's certain things like, oh God, I'm gonna solve this puzzle and something's gonna pop out and I'm gonna have to fight it, or like in the original Resident Evil, you go by a giant aquarium, and you're just like, oh fuck, this is not gonna go the way that I want it to, right? And then there's like a fucking there's a zombie shark, right? Like it's just total like
Ah,
right,
that sounds
exactly.
like a nightmare. What game is the shark from?
That's in the original one. Yeah.
Oh God, nope. That would have
Yeah.
freaking, I would have turned off the game right then and there if I had played that one. I don't know what it is. I don't know if we've talked about this before, Josh, but like sharks in video games, I don't know what it is. I have such a freaking fear, especially in games like, I think we may have briefly touched up on it. The weird freaking shark in Ocarina of Time in the laboratory.
Mm.
Do you recall that when you go to the
Yes.
laboratory
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
and it's just like you go down there with your steel boots or whatever, and then you look to your left, and then there's a freaking shark behind this like jail thing, and
Right.
it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. I
But
can't tell you
it's
how
startling.
terrifying that
Yeah.
shit was to me. And also the shark in Donkey Kong for the Nintendo 64. There's a shark in there. Oh no, not the shark. What was it? The eels. Man, I don't know. Sea creatures in video games freak me out, is what I'm saying. So I'm glad I
Well,
didn't play the first one.
yeah, I mean, I think, and not to get off on a tangent about, water levels and sea creature enemies, but I think games have always wanted and have always had this idea of, man, we need to have underwater cool stuff happening, right? And haven't really figured out to actually make it feel right in a video game sense to have combat underwater, especially with, like sharks and different things. And this is going to sound horribly silly and stupid, but probably the game that does underwater combat the best is Echo the Dolphin for the Sega Genesis, because you are also a sea creature. So, um,
Oh, that's
but
funny.
Yeah, not to get off on a tangent about water, but water levels have been in games for as long as we can remember. They're not going anywhere. And though this wasn't technically a
Yeah.
water level in the original Resident Evil, it is there is a walkway that if you don't time it correctly, the shark, and at least in the GameCube version, the shark can leap up on the walkway and bite you, and kill you. So
Nope.
yeah, it's
Nope.
kind of rough.
Nope. Nope.
Um, But so after Resident Evil Zero does take place also in the Spencer Mansion, kind of at different times. Um, Rebecca is the character that you kind of know about in the first game, but you never find her in the first game. But she's in Resident Evil Zero, and that kind of continues this thread of all these games being intertwined and connected to each other, at least the numerical releases. Um, and then, I think the other character's name is Billy, and he's very unimportant. Like he's some prisoner that they were going to experiment on, and then he winds up breaking free. They meaning, of course, the evil Umbrella Corporation, whose logo we see on Havoc's ring entrance jacket.
Oh, nice. It's a big fan.
Yeah. So after 2002, when the GameCube sees Resident Evil remake, it sees Resident Evil Zero, comes probably the game. If you've never played a Resident Evil game, this is probably the one that you played. My wife is not like the biggest gamer in the world, but she knows Resident Evil 4. And she knows that, it's the only Resident Evil game that really, well, at least it was the first one, that integrated a shop mechanic where you would actually buy items and upgrades from a quote unquote shopkeeper. Is this creepy guy in a cloak. Um, and I wish Colleen were here because she would do her impersonation of him. But he basically, every time you talk to him, he goes, "Oh, what are you buying?" And it's very creepy. But the creepy shop guy aside, Resident Evil 4 is probably the most acclaimed game of the series, and it was also the first one to move beyond the fixed camera angles in the rooms. It puts you in a third-person shooter style camera, and it still, of course, has the lift and shoot game mechanic. So there is no firing from the hip, so to speak. You still have to raise your gun and then pull the trigger to shoot. But this game, pretty flawless, in my opinion. Sandy, did you ever get your hands on Resident Evil 4, either the GameCube release or the later PlayStation release?
I played it on the GameCube, but I did not finish it. I honestly think Resident Evil is in one of those series that, like, I tried my damnedest and I'm gonna beat it, damn it, but I just was never able to. And that goes from the very first one I played, Resident Evil 2, to the freaking remake. I still haven't finished it. It's too scary and too hard. And then, of course, with Resident Evil 7. So I do remember playing this when I played it on the GameCube.
Yeah.
This was the one set in. It was, what country was it? I'm trying to remember. They were in Spain.
That was the aesthetic, yeah. I don't think they
Okay,
ever said officially they were in Spain, but they
I
did.
just
That
remember
was
that one
definitely,
being.
yeah, that was the aesthetic for sure. And it was
Hmm.
the first time that we got to see that some of this stuff is kind of going on globally in this universe, right? The
Yep, outside
prior,
of Raccoon City.
right, the prior games were all in Raccoon City and the surrounding areas. Um,
And this was a few years after as well, right? When it comes to the storyline of it, it was a few years after in a whole different setting, so it was very new in that sense. Like, oh shit, like this has been going on for quite a while now, and it's like you mentioned, global.
right, exactly. And so you have this one going on. Leon is for the protagonist in Resident Evil 2, so we have him back here in Resident Evil 4. And because of what he accomplished in Raccoon City and helping kind of stop the virus there, he's kind of well known in the special services and things like that. So he's actually sent to, and it is actually, they do say Spain, but they don't name a village. They just kind of leave it a nameless village in Spain to go and rescue the president's daughter. Um, And I will tell you this, Resident Evil, in my opinion, never needs to go back to missions where you have to protect and deliver someone from point A to point B, because Ashley, the president's daughter in Resident Evil 4, is she's a pain in the butt to bring around. She doesn't do anything. But if she dies, then you get a game
Yeah.
over. So it's
And
like,
that to me was so frustrating because I think the issue that I had why I never finished is like she kept freaking dying. I was like, I'm
yeah,
over it. Screw you,
I think
Ashley. You're never getting home.
I think I had one where like the game glitched and she fell down a ladder well and she just died. And and obviously, games aren't perfect. Those things happen. Stuff like that's notorious in like Bethesda games and other big AAA games. So it wasn't something I was like, I can't believe they had this glitch. But it was just kind of like, oh, you got to be shitting me. But this was also
I
the
get
first
it.
game that didn't
Ah,
have ink ribbon saving, right? So it kind of moves away from that slow burn survival horror feel of the first three, where you can only save if you have an ink ribbon for the typewriter. You have very limited ammo. Um, and if you run out of ammo, now you have to fight off zombies with a knife. And oh, by the way, it's very ineffective. To now you're in Resident Evil 4, ammo is way more plentiful. You get a bunch of different weapons. Your knife works really well. Leon also can do like roundhouse kicks and shit. So it turns into a bit more of an action game in this one. And it found that right mix where everyone still really liked it. But that
yeah, and that
changes
was I
and
fit in that. I fit in that because to me, growing up, especially with not being able to save when you could, not having enough ammo. To me, ammo was such a biggie. I was never even at the point too, which was like, shit, I'm out of ammo. Therefore, I'm just running around. I'm just screwed, right?
right,
So to me, Resident Evil 4 was like a perfect mix of like, okay, I can do this, even though I was still not able to do it. But it
right.
gave me opportunity to be able to beat the game and actually fully enjoy it to its full potential. But like you mentioned, it actually started to turn more into an action game rather than a horror survival game at that point. But it was still
Yeah,
hit the sweet spot.
yeah, and you know, it's pretty cool to at this point they start kind of mixing in some other kind of style games. They start doing some motion controls with the Wii. So they released a couple of rail shooters. If you're not familiar with rail shooters, what I mean by that is games where they put you on a set track, very arcade style, where your character continually progresses without you moving them, and you just basically point and shoot at what's on the screen. So if you ever played like Time Crisis or any of those types of arcade games, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say when I'm talking about games like the Umbrella Chronicles or I think Revelations is another one is similar, where the game's just on a rail. It goes from point A to point B, and you shoot everything in between. Um, but they use those to also catch you up on story you might have missed.
That's
But like
interesting.
I
I don't think I
said,
played those.
they're not really. You don't have to. Because they have the Umbrella Chronicles and the Dark
Yeah.
Side Chronicles, and they are on the Wii, but they predate, if I remember correctly, the Wii Motion Plus. So because of that, if you
Oh,
remember, using a Wiimote before the Wii Motion Plus, it was very sketch, and this is no different. Especially, when you're trying to shoot zombies on the screen before they get you, it can be kind of difficult. Um, but fun still. It kind of it harkens back to a lot, right, with the Nintendo, that duck hunt feel, that light gun feel. Of course, it's a little bit different because it is the Wii motion sensor. But of course, you have to worry about where your Wii motion sensor is on your TV. You have to plan for that accordingly. How you're going to hold your gun. It's just I don't know. It wasn't for me. Some people really enjoyed it.
yeah.
But yeah,
Motion controls for most people, it's like, oh,
yeah.
nightmare.
Take it or leave it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll probably do an episode at some point, Sandy, on motion controls and where that leads us to from the past to the present and with VR and all that going forward. But it all started really, I think, as far as home entertainment goes with the light gun and using it on duck hunt.
Duck hunt. And that was just like a little sensor inside the gun, right? It was some archaic technology, but it just made us
Yeah,
feel like we were in such
basically.
control.
Yeah, the way it works was basically when you pull the trigger, everything blinks out on the screen except for the item that's supposed to be shot. So when you pull the trigger,
Hmm.
it blanks everything on the screen except for, say, the clay pigeon that you're trying to shoot or duck, depending on what game you're playing, what mode you're playing. And if the sensor in the gun was 1-to-1 with what you were aiming at, then it would count register the hit. And since it was only sensing light from the screen, um, there's people that would demonstrate hacks where you could literally just point it at a light bulb and pull the trigger, and it would count as a hit. So, you know, but for the time, for the 80s, it was as best they
Oh
could
my
do.
God. It was the best thing ever.
Right. So, moving on, like I said, so Resident Evil starts to turn into more of that action style game, and that's none more prevalent than when we get to Resident Evil 5. I don't have much to say about Resident Evil 5. Um, it comes out 4 years after Resident Evil 4. Everyone was super hyped about it. There's all kinds of memes that were generated. This is like early meme days, right? 2009, 2010. And there was all kinds of memes about because the protagonist, Chris Redfield, at one point is literally punching a boulder to make it move. And it is the most ridiculous shit you've ever seen in a video game.
Oh no. I
Definitely
did
going,
not play this one.
yeah, I played it. It was met with a lot of criticism too, because it does have you shooting zombies in Africa, and because of that, the zombies they're not as zombie-like as they are early in the earlier games, right? That started with Resident Evil 4. It's a different kind of virus that's kind of going on, and so there's a lot of backlash, a lot of accusations of racism and different things like that that occurred from the production of this game, because you are shooting just hundreds of black zombies, to be blunt about it. Um,
Hmm?
you know, there there's two sides to that conversation. I don't know that we're the podcast to tackle that, but needless to say, Resident Evil 5 was kind of met with um, a lot of mixed reaction, and it wasn't just because of that. It was because, man, is this even a survival horror game anymore? I mean, there's entire shootout scenes that are played out in broad daylight, which does not feel like Resident
Oh
Evil at all.
no. With Resident Evil, it's the darkness, it's the grittiness, it's that you don't know when you have to adjust your settings on your TV to the darkest levels to make sure it adds to that creepiness. What's
Exactly.
around the corner, what's coming through the window, what's this and that. And that's
Right.
completely taken away if you're playing in broad daylight. Like it's a whole different game.
Right. It's a stark contrast where I can play that game at any given time. It doesn't bother me. I'm just running through. I'm shooting the creatures. I'm shooting this. And like when I played the original Resident Evil remake on the GameCube, and I was playing it at like 2 a.m. at a buddy's house, and a zombie, there's like early on there's a bathroom in the first game where you go in and you interact with the bathtub, and it shows like a cutscene where like you go in and like you move the shower curtain and a zombie comes out, right?
Oh
So
my god.
we didn't have ammo when we encountered it the first time. So we're like, okay, we're just leaving that there, right? So we just leave the bathroom and we're just like, all right, we're good to go. So we just go and we're playing like 4 hours go by. Eventually everything in the mansion gets pretty connected. You're kind of moving through the spots that you started the game with. And we forgot, where we were. We run past this door. I shit you not. 4 hours after we left this dude in this bathroom, he burst the door open, and we absolutely lost our shit. We woke up my friend's parents. They were pissed. We were just like screaming, like, ah! Like, because, we were 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids sitting there at 2 in the morning after playing for hours and completely forgetting that, like, we just like, oh, this is a hallway we've been in before. Just keep going, right? And we were both like player and non-player, like we were just both sitting there going like, ah, like,
That's
but but that
amazing.
but that can't happen in Resident Evil 5 because you don't retrace your steps. You go through daylight, and I mean, the puzzles are just basically non-existent. So it was not a great release. Met with some mixed reviews, and they didn't fix it for Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 takes on and I don't know how familiar you are with this one, Sandy, but basically this is the PS3, Xbox 360 era, and you have basically, like we talked about, we started seeing, okay, there's a virus in Spain, there's a virus in Africa that Chris Redfield encounters, and now with Resident Evil 6, we see that it is completely global. A large portion of it, I believe, takes place in China. Um, there's stuff that takes place in Europe. There's stuff. It's all over the place. And you play there's three different playable characters, I want to say, if I recall correctly. and they're actually three separate stories. And each story has its own secondary character also. So they really tried to blow this out big and do a huge global thing. And it's the lowest rated numerical release of Resident Evil.
Oh,
It
I do
just,
remember when this one came out. It felt like they were just kind of trying to make up for the disappointment that was with Resident Evil 5. So they tried to go back to the roots of
right.
what Resident Evil was known for, but it was just so convoluted. They did too much. It was
Yeah.
just all over the place, and when it comes to the mechanics, the storyline, what they were trying to accomplish, the story that they were trying to tell, and that's the one part that I remember from Resident Evil 6 when I played it. Very
Yeah.
briefly.
Yeah. And, to that point, like, okay, so like Leon is one of the characters you can control. Leon's story plays very traditional Resident Evil. You're inside buildings, there's zombies around every corner, you feel overwhelmed because you don't have as much ammo. And then you play as Chris Redfield, and it's Resident Evil 5 Part 2. It's just unlimited ammo basically in certain spots. There's giant, I mean, 30-foot tall monsters that you're running around shooting. It doesn't feel like it feels completely different than anything that you've ever played, and it's not in a good way.
And you know what? To me, when we find out that the virus mutated and they start to explain where these giant monsters are coming from, even even in the movies, to me, one
Right.
of my favorite movies is the first Resident Evil. That movie to me was just absolutely perfect. I can go back and rewatch it ever so often because to me it was just such a simple story. Like, this is the outbreak. These are how quickly it spreads. You're in one location. You have one group trying to survive it, trying to figure it out. And then, of course, you have the storyline of, okay, who let this virus out? Very simple storytelling. Even like when it comes to wrestling, sometimes keeping it simple, sometimes keeping it just straightforward, it ends up giving you the best story. And
Right.
that's what that first movie was. When you start getting into the later movies and, you see just these monstrosities coming about, the virus is mutated, now it can cause all of these creatures and they look like aliens more so than zombies, and
Right.
it just became this convoluted mess to me. So to me, you have Resident Evil 2, you have the original Resident Evil movie. That's, to me, the horror survival game of Resident Evil kind of compacts to. But then you get into all this other mess and it just
Yeah. I and Resident Evil 6 was the last thing that I got Resident Evil wise. I didn't buy Resident Evil 7 when it came out. I was disappointed by 6. I was disappointed by 5. I felt like they weren't ever really going to recapture what was going on. And so we're actually hitting a Resident Evil game that you played, Sandy, that I didn't. So, break down kind of, for us here, kind of where we pivoted to with Resident Evil 7.
so Resident Evil 7, to me, I still don't understand the story because we're in I can't even, oh man, I just remember being so freaking scared. If you haven't played it, Josh, definitely, I would recommend playing it because to me, it really got back to the basics of a horror game rather than doing too much like with 5, doing too much like with 6. But it still didn't feel necessarily like a Resident Evil game to me just because of how the virus, I guess, had evolved. In a sense, to me, I was like, is this even still about zombies and the virus, or what's actually going on here? And I'm still kind of confused about that, to be honest. But I just remembered I played it. This is the one where I said I had to put on Disney music,
Right.
and the TV was all the way to the brightness. It was a beautiful game. I loved the puzzles with it, the adventure side of it. I really, really enjoyed. It's a very smart game. The way they mixed it in with the mansion location, and then it was like in a, what was that called? I can't even recall, to be honest. To me, it was like Louisiana, like in a freaking,
Kind of a Bayou kind of feel.
yeah, the bayou. That's the word I was thinking of. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
you had a couple of different locations, and the puzzles are very smart. The battle, to me, it felt clean. There was just, I think I quit when the mother of the family that you're kind of encountering here turns into this freaking monster that looked like like a giant cockroach of some sort. Oh my God, it was freaking wild. I couldn't play anymore. And of course, this also got ruined for me because my friend made me play it on the VR for a little while.
Oh no.
Uh, do not play these games on the VR. I wanted to cry and pee my pants. Like, imagine you being like submerged in person in this game. Like, that is the last game that you would want to be in a VR setting, so that you're actually seeing these creatures and it's
Yeah.
dark and creepy. And they put the freaking noise canceling headphones on me too. I was a wreck. I played for like 2 minutes. I was like, I'm done, and I just went back into the trailer. It was just so terrifying. There's a little safe area in the trailer where nothing can really happen to you. And I left there. I walked a few. Something came at me, and I immediately just turned around and went back in. I was like, no, that's 2 minutes, too much VR. Nope, this is too scary, and I was not able to finish the game.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I don't dabble much in VR. Just as we're both glasses wearers. I'm not a contacts
Oh yeah.
person. I can't do contacts. I can't touch my own eyes. It's a weird thing I have. So basically, anytime I do anything that requires me to not have my glasses, I just kind of say, well, I can see good enough. But that doesn't really work with VR. VR, you kind of have to be able to see, everything. So if I ever work up the courage to put in contacts, maybe I'll dabble with VR. But VR is not for me right now. I tried to put on an Oculus, and the person, the Oculus sales rep said, "Oh yeah, it'll go over your glasses, no problem." And then I broke my glasses in the store, so it
Oh
was
no.
not. Yeah, that person felt very, very, very bad. And I was like, listen, man, I've been needing new glasses. It's not a big deal. Like, but I'm sure that person was like, oh my God, this person's going to complain. I'm going to get fired. I'm so screwed. But,
Oh
you know, we've both worked retail.
yeah.
It's,
We're never.
I know it does. Same thing. Like, if I go to like Publix and I ask the person, like, if I go to the deli and it's like that closing hour, I know first of all, like they hate every facet of me being there. So I'm gonna be like super nice because I worked at Subway. That was my first job. And I know like I'm trying to break down things, I'm trying to put things away, trying to prep for the next morning, and then that customer comes in and orders 7 sandwiches. I will
Oh,
never
you're
be
like,
that
damn
person.
it.
I will
Me
never be
neither.
that
Oh my
person.
God.
Oh, I just
No.
I ordered one sandwich and it wasn't even for me tonight. It was for Colleen and it was like 9 o'clock and they closed at 10 and I was like, I'm so sorry for being here. And I'm really sorry for being up and they're like, oh yo, you're what time is it? I'm like, oh, it's like 8:58 and they're like, oh, you're nowhere near to the worst person that we've ever had. I'm like, but you didn't say I wasn't bad. Like
Yeah, right. I would have been like, hey, wait a minute.
yeah. I was like, it's gonna be super easy, I promise. But anyways, only one other numerical game to talk about with the Resident Evil series, and it hasn't come out yet. It's one of the big launch titles for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and that is Resident Evil Village, which we've learned is Resident Evil 8. Did you watch this trailer yet, Sandy?
I have not. I literally just found out about it today when I was trying to recap my Resident Evil memories.
So it is. When I was watching the PlayStation launch event, they showed this trailer without any introduction, telling us what it was. Um,
Mhm.
and then there's like werewolves, there's like creepy ladies, and I'm just like, okay, this is kind of cool, like a new survival horror game. And then at the end, they have the splash title where it writes Village, and then the V, the I, and the two L's turn yellow, and then it says
Oh,
Resident Evil underneath it. So Resident Evil 8 Village um, is the new game that is coming out. I'm interested to see kind of if it goes back. It looks like it's a little bit more survival horror. Um, the early hands-on that people have been seeing, they say it reminds them a lot more of Resident Evil 4. So fingers crossed, and we'll see how that one goes.
and this to me, so I'll have to watch the trailer, but from what I'm reading about it directly, of course, it's the numerical release directly after Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. So it has to do a little bit from that plot that we see there. I still need to go back and finish that game and see how that ties in with Chris Redfield and the Umbrella Corporation. Because to me, it was just like, holy shit, some crazy shit went down here in Louisiana, and this family is just possessed more than anything. When I was playing that,
Yeah,
I was like, what the hell? Because again, they don't look like your typical zombies that you think, okay, Resident Evil zombies.
right.
It's gotten more into the whole, like it says, like Biohazard, where it's like, okay, you're not gonna turn into just a zombie and you're not just doing this anymore. It's something more. It's this virus
Yeah.
that's evolving, that's causing all types of havoc in the world. So, Josh, you need to go back and play Biohazard because I thought that was such a really well done game. And I need to replay it and actually finish it this time. And we need to get ready for Resident Evil Village. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, and I do need to go back and play that one. It is actually currently right now on PlayStation Now. So if you have a PlayStation Now subscription, they added it for the month of October. I think it's going to be slated to be on there until through January, I want to say, which probably takes us through the release of Village. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see kind of where the series goes. I know we've talked a little bit about kind of like, looking at the cultural impact that Resident Evil had. You mentioned the movies. There's been like the animes that have come over that are more, stylized with Leon and Claire and different characters from the previous games. Um, I think because of Resident Evil, we were able to see other games, other horror games really be successful. We saw, another big contributor to that was the Silent Hill franchise, which I don't know that we'll cover that in depth. I'm not too familiar with that whole series. I played a couple of them. But, I think we can suffice to say that they played a huge part too of that survival horror genre. But Resident Evil to me kind of almost served as a revival, pun intended, of the zombie genre in our popular culture here.
100%. From there, we have countless of zombie movies, um, the Resident Evil movies that we discussed earlier, but not only that, but, you get into The Walking Dead. You get
Yeah,
for a good 10 years there, zombies was all that we would ever talk about. And they were the ones who were the most successful when it comes to video games. I am thinking of one right now. I don't know if you ever played it, Josh. Zombie U, the zombie horror
I did
version for
not.
the Wii U.
I did not play that one. I had friends that did and liked it, and that was actually a Wii U launch title, if memory serves.
It was, and it was a brand new IP for Nintendo going into this genre of video games for the release for the Wii U. And I I was one of those geeks outside in 2012 in line for the midnight launch of the Wii U, and I got it with the Zombie U. That game, it is tough, and I thought they did such a great job, and it really took you back to the first and second Resident Evil, where you're just there on your own, no ammo, no nothing, shit out of luck, good luck, survive. And that's
Right.
exactly, and it was such a good, it was a very very well made game. And for those few of us that did actually buy it and enjoyed it, it was top notch. And of course, it's really sad that not a lot of people got to really witness and kind of explore that game because, you know, the mishaps that the Wii U had. But it was such a fun game, and, you know, they gave it their all with that. But
Yeah.
pop culture with zombies, it blew up.
Well, you know, too, and I don't think Nintendo is willing to retouch that franchise. I think, Zombie U is going to be kind of a thing of the past and where it is. And if you want to play it, you're going to have to buy the Wii U disc. But I think about games too, like The Last of Us. I don't know that a game like The Last of Us gets greenlit as a AAA title if we don't have 20 years before that of Resident Evil games. I mean, you think about it, we're coming up on 25 years of Resident Evil. We'll hit that in March, which is something that it's kind of mind blowing that we're talking about. Oh, Mario's been around for 35 years. Next year's 35 years of Zelda. Well, we're coming up on 25 years of Resident Evil, which is to me, I remember a really remarkable thing in and of itself because, horror genre games aren't supposed to continue to last that long. We've seen Silent Hills not making new games. Any of the other ones, Fatal Frame had a couple of games, but these are kind of onesie twosie, and they're done. But I think it
Mhm.
speaks volumes to the investment that Capcom has made in that story. They've had some games that we didn't touch on that weren't as successful. Games like Operation Raccoon City, where they tried to give you a different angle of being the bad guy, being a member of Umbrella Corp, and doing it was a time where squad based Rainbow Six style shooters were very popular. So I don't blame them for trying to do something like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, these games are very successful. They're very well made. They receive critical success, and also consumers love them too. The gamers, anytime a Resident Evil game comes out, we flock to them. So I look for more good things in the future as 25 years of Resident Evil comes and
25
goes.
years. I can't believe it. I honestly, when I was reading about that too, I was like, has it been 25 years already? And my mind was kind of blown a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the game series that have been around since '96, I mean, how many are left? How many are still making games in that same series from '96? I mean, you see Mario, you see Zelda, Metroid, Castlevania sometimes it comes out with some stuff, but we haven't seen a Metroid game in a long time. We haven't seen a
Mm.
Castlevania game in a long time. But we still get Resident Evil on a pretty regular release schedule, at least as frequent as we're getting Zelda and Mario games. So, um, pretty remarkable for a third-party publisher. I'm looking forward to, like I said, to see what happens next. But before we get away from this episode here, Sandy, what do we got? What do we got wrestling wise? I know you had a wrestling show you wanted to promote.
I do. So wrestling's been a little bit quiet now. We do because of the pandemic. Now we are seeing some independent shows kind of getting back out there and decipher how we're going to put on shows for the audience and being the safest possible. Tampa Bay Pro, we're not quite there yet. Unfortunately, the building that we run out of is a government building, so they haven't opened their doors just yet. We're trying to find alternatives, but for now, we're actually putting older shows that we have done on the Fight TV app. So if you have that, make sure you download it. These are absolutely free shows. You can also go to on a computer, fight.tv, or of course, if you have like a browser on your PlayStation, on your Xbox, I know that's what I use, my Xbox, and I just put in there Fight TV on the browser. We have a free show. It actually just dropped yesterday. Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling episode 20. It's 1 hour of action featuring the origin of the Tampa Bay Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. We have a great fatal four-way with Troy Hollywood, David Mercury, which is actually one of the coaches from the Lethal Academy. He's great technical wrestler versus Ryan Ocean and Rhett Giddens. We have a great battle between Hunter Law and Brandon Law, and a tag team showcase between the American Outlaws and the Dirty Blondes. If you haven't seen the Dirty Blondes before, definitely check out their matches. They are so great. They're so fun to watch live. So definitely check that show out. We have it available on Fight TV for absolutely free. Definitely check that out and give us a good rating, and hopefully we'll be able to put on more shows on there for you guys. And hopefully we can get back to having live shows. Maybe you guys can come see us, or we'll have more content up for you on Fight TV.
Awesome, yeah, and kind of like you said, there's not as much independent wrestling to promote. I mentioned earlier the Warrior Wrestling stuff was really good. But I'm gonna go kind of a different angle and talk about the video games I played this week. And I actually, this is not a new game, so to speak, but it is a game that was removed from the servers and then completely put back together and then relaunched. And that was Final Fantasy 14 Online. I have started playing it for the first time this week, and it's because the complete edition, including the most recent expansion pack, everything was like $30. So I was like, well, I can't pass on that. So I'm not a huge MMO person. I played World of Warcraft for about 2 months, maybe three. And I said, man, I just can't do this. I don't have the time for this, right? I don't,
It's a
especially
commitment, dude.
it really is. And so I had heard that Final Fantasy 14 was a little bit more user friendly to kind of jump in, jump out. And I gotta be honest with you, first week playing it, I am completely getting lost into it. I have a Lancer. Nolan helped me design my character when I first made it. So, my 4-year-old, he's like, I want you to make it look like me as much as possible. I'm like, okay, buddy, yeah, no problem. Um,
He's so cute.
yeah, he's a funny kid. So he likes to kind of sit on my lap while I play it, and it's really too like if I'm trying to like if I want to pick up a controller and play something in the middle of the day while I'm working, like that can be difficult, right? Like you have to constantly pause, you have to do this, do that. Well, I mean, with Final Fantasy 14, it's logged in. There, if I'm not in a spot where there's actively, enemies attacking me, and by the way, you can't pause because it's an MMO, you're on a live server. Um, but you just park yourself where there's no enemies, and then you just put the controller down, you do your work that you got to do, and then when you're waiting for the next batch of work to come in, you pick up the controller, you go, knock out a quest or two. And I think I want to say like, because I didn't technically start my subscription yet, I think the free to play version has a level cap of 35, and I've hit level 20 already in 4 days.
Oh
So
shit.
yeah, I played kind of a lot. So yeah,
I say.
Colleen's like, if I have to have an intervention with you about this game, it's not going to go well for you. And I'm like,
Oh no.
you won't, I promise, I promise. Yeah, so I've barely played it all today. And it's, we're recording late because this is what we do. I'm probably not going to jump on it, but I might walk past the PlayStation and have other thoughts. I don't know. Um,
Uh-oh.
but if you're like me and you're not a big MMO guy or gal, definitely check that one out.
I may have to. I got some free time. Uh-oh.
Yeah,
I'll
I
get
mean,
super lost in it.
yeah,
Like,
I mean
Josh, I can't do
it's
the podcast. I'm busy.
yeah, right, exactly. What we next? So, what do you want to record? Listen, I got a raid going on right now. Um, why don't you just you do that thing where you talk too much, Josh, and everyone will be happy with it. Just do
Uh-oh.
it. So, anywho, that's our show this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in again. Make sure that you check out all the podcasts on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Check out One Nation Radio. James had a really good episode this week as his co-host, and our friend Rich Latta got married. So James rocked a solo show, which I can't imagine doing. I like to bounce off of people and have conversations, but
Yeah.
he did a great job. Uh, Make sure you check out the Ricky and Clive show. Um, Keeping It Strong Style, Grown Men Watch the Shit, the Grave Consequences podcast, all things elite. Um, you know, all kinds of great content on the network. You'll get your wrestling fix from anybody. We cover pretty much everything, every major promotion for the most part worldwide. We even have Ricky and Clive overseas. So we get a pretty well-rounded wrestling experience here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We're happy to bring it to you every week. We got a show for every day of the week. Make sure you subscribe, hit those 5 stars, leave us a review, both on the network feed and also on our show feed. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podbean. I haven't found one that we're not on yet, Sandy. Have you?
I have not. We're everywhere.
Everywhere, including ProWrestlingTees.com/social suplex. Definitely check that out. You can follow us on Twitter at 8-Bit Suplex. You can follow our network at Social Suplex. And then that's also on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can follow me at Laughlin_Joshua. And then you can follow Sandy at Sailor Zelda. And that's on all your social media, right, Sandy?
That's just on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram at Sandy Gaviria. And don't forget, guys, you can win some good free stuff, some cool geeky stuff if you reach out to us and let us know or give us suggestions as to what video game topics we should cover for our following episodes. So we have lots of free goodies that you can win. Hit us up on our social medias, like Josh just said, or hit us up on the email as well.
Yeah, and that email address is, of course, 8bitsuplex@gmail.com. And without further ado, for Sandy Gaviria, I am Josh McLaughlin. And when you go down that long hallway, make sure to check for liquors.
Sam Liquors. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.